Okay, this video is on your functions quiz, is to remind you how to go about doing questions like these when you talk about functions, and also your proper notation for functions. So number one says to list the domain and range of each relation. And what I need to do here is I need to look at each of the points on the graph, and I need to find my ordered pairs. Because when I'm talking about domain and range, we know that domain is my x values and range is my y values. So one of the easiest ways to do it is to make a table, and I'll put x and y. And then I'm going to go ahead and look at each one of these points. So I have 5 points on this graph. I need to make sure I have 5 ordered pairs. My first one I'm going to look at, and I'll do another color so we can see this a little better, is this point right here. So that's going to be, if I'm going x first, that's -2 to the left, and I'm not going up or down, so it's -2, 0. That means I have -2 and 0 for that ordered pair. And I could even write it right here, -2 and 0 if I wanted to. My next one, I'm going to go for this dot right here. So I'm going to go -3, +1. -3 to the left, and +1 goes up. So that's my ordered pair for that second point. My next point, and by the way, it doesn't matter which point you go to, first, second, third, fourth. I'm just going to randomly pick. I'm going to do this one next right here. So I'm going 2 to the right. That's my x value, so that's +2. And then I'm going down -5. So I'm going down 5. That gives me -5. My next point I'm going to do is this one right here. So I'm going to go right 1 and up 4. So my order pair is 1, 4. And then my last dot right here is going to be 5, 1. So +5, 1. Now, it's asking me to list the domain and the range for each relation. So the first thing I'm going to look at is this column right here, because I said that x is also my domain. And remember, we talked about all those different kinds of words that x means. Domain, anything with an IN. So it's domain, input, independent, all those words that have an IN in the word. And then y, this is going to be my range. And all the other kind of words like output and dependent variable, that type of thing. So I'm looking at my domain, first of all, my x values, and that's all of these right here. Now, one of the things I need to make sure of is I need to make sure that I don't duplicate any of these numbers. I have a -2, I have a 3, I have a 2, I have a 1, I have a 5. Okay, all those are represented only one time, so I need to make sure that all of those numbers go in my domain. Remember, I must use my braces. That is that squiggly looking bracket, and you got to practice writing that. So I'm going to use these numbers, -2, -3, 2, 1, and 5. They do not need to be in any kind of order. That's okay. If you wanted to put them in ascending or descending order, that's fine. But I can put them in any order I want. The only thing I cannot do is I cannot repeat a number. And so be careful, because this is a -2 here, which is good, and this is a +2, so those are different numbers. And I must have my braces. My squiggly brackets must be in there. If I do not have it, if I left my answers in this table here, or if I left my answer just without the braces, I just got the whole thing wrong. So make sure you're doing that. Okay, the next one I need to look at is I need to know my range. So here are my range values. Now again, I'm going to look to see if I have any duplicate numbers, and this time I do. 1 is twice. I have 1 here and here. I do not need the second one. I'm only going to put, again, squiggly braces, or excuse me, it's a brace, but it's, some people say squiggly bracket. 0, 1, -5, and 4. And end my braces. That's all I need for that one there, because those, I do not need to put that other one. If I put the other one, I just got the answer wrong again. All right, number 2, we have already, this is my domain, we already said, and this is my range. And this time the numbers are given to me in a table, so I don't have to put them in the table. That's pretty easy. But I do need to look. I have a 2, I have a 6, I have a 2, and a 6. Again, I only need the numbers one time. So I do not need this one, and I do not need this one. All I need to do is my brace, 2, 6. That's my domain. That's it. Just these two numbers need to go for my domain. Again, make sure you have your braces. Make sure you do not duplicate numbers. Okay, taking a look at my range. I'll do another color to help you. I already have a -1, so I don't need this one, but that's it. Now I have -1, -2, and -3. They're all different. So my range is going to be -1, -2, and -3. All right, so that's that one. I also have to find the domain and range for these ordered pairs. And again, I would strongly urge you to put it in a table to do this. So I'm going to do my table over here, give myself some room. And again, my X and my Y, I just think it's a little easier to see it this way. My first order pair is 0, 5, 1, -2, 2, 9, 3, -2, and 4, 7. Let's make sure I didn't miss anything. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 order pairs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 order pairs. Okay, those aren't negative signs, so I'll erase them. They're just counting that I did that. All right, so let's take a look. I need domain and I need range. So again, my domain is this column right here. I do not have any duplicates, so I need all those numbers. Squiggly brace, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. End my brace. Make sure you have all that. My range is this value, all these values right here. I have a -2 twice. I don't need this one here. So I need to have all the rest of the numbers. So this is 5, -2, 9, and 7. Because I need 4 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. Okay, this next part here, if you recall, when I was going over this, I said one of the easiest ways to think about independent and dependent variables when you're already given an equation like this is to look to see what number, or excuse me, what variable is in the rule. Speaking of which, we want a variable. That's what we're talking about. We do not want the number 5 at all. We do not want the number 4 at all. We do not want the 7. We do not, and that's it. That's all we have there. So any of those numbers do not go in this answer at all because they are not variables. Those are constants. We need a variable. A variable is going to be a letter or some kind of word that would represent that letter. And we are looking for both the independent and the dependent variables. So again, as we look at this, we're looking to see what is in the rule. So I'm going to just look at the rule part right here. That's my rule. What letter is in my rule? Well, J is in my rule, so my independent variable is J. That makes B my dependent variable because it depends on whatever J is. On number 5, the same thing. Here's my rule. Be careful, they wrote it backward on you this time. Again, I'm only looking for the letter that's in this rule for a variable. So H is my independent because it's in the rule. That makes K right here my dependent. K depends on H. All right, number 6 and number 7, I think the only tricky part here was some people were doing a lot more work than they needed to do. First of all, it says read the directions. This is always a key thing. Find the indicated values for the function given. Okay, so they're giving me this function right here. This is the function they're giving me, and they're telling me that that's the only value that I need to plug in. I don't need to plug in anything else, just the -10. That's it. I'm not making a table with -1, 0, 1, nothing like that, because they're already giving me the value of x. So remember that this f of -10 is the f of x. See the x there? The -10 is my x value. So I'm just going to plug it in. I have negative, but careful though, look what we have here. We have -10. That negative x means I have a negative, there's my negative sign, and then the x value is that right there, so that's got to go in my parentheses. I'm going to tell you, make sure you put it in parentheses. It's going to help you out a whole lot if you do it this way. Don't forget, we're also adding 7. Okay, so now that I have this is like saying -1, if you think of a little 1 right here, times -10. So negative times a negative is a positive. That means I have 10 plus 7. And that means my answer there is 17. That's what we're looking for. That's showing your work. On this one here, they're giving me a fraction, so I have 1/4, and my x value is right here, so I'm timesing by 16. Now, because I have a fraction, remember I'm going to put the whole number over 1 to make it into a fraction to help me do my math. And I still have a -3. Remember too, now I'm going to simplify before I multiply. If you don't want to do that, then I couldn't just do 1 times 16 and 4 times 1. I'm going to wind up with 16 over 4, which is going to be dividing, and I wind up with 4. But I can also do that simplifying first. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 16 divided by 4 is 4. Now all I have is 1 times 4 and 1 times 1. So the 4 over 1 becomes 4. And it's minus 3. Don't forget that part. And then my final answer then, I'm doing that. My final answer is 1. That's all we were doing there on that. Again, they only gave you one value for x. That's all you're doing. They're not having you pick. They're telling you what to use, so make sure you do what they say. All right, here, this is a little different. It's almost the same thing, but this time they're giving me 3 values for x. My domain, remember domain is my x value, so this time they're giving me 3 of them. I'm going to go ahead and set up a table with my x value and my y value. And my rule is going to, this is my rule right here, and that's going to go right here. This way I can plug in my numbers and do my math. I like to plug in all my numbers first. So we have 2, 4, negative 3. And that means I have 2 minus 7 times 2. And that means I have 2 minus 7 times 4. And 2 minus 7 times negative 3. Again, watch your signs, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so now I'm going to do some math. 2 times 7 is 14. And then 2 minus 14 gives me negative 12. My next number is negative 7 times 4 is negative 28. 2 minus 28 is negative 26. Here I have a negative times a negative. That gives me a positive 21. So 2 plus 21 is 23. I think this is where a lot of people made an error. They weren't thinking about a negative times a negative being a positive. Here's the other thing people did not do. Again, proper notation. This is what they're asking me. Find the range. This technically right here is my range, but this is not how I leave my answer. Remember, I have to actually physically write R equals brace. Make sure you have the braces. Now I can put these numbers. Negative 12, negative 26, and 23. And then end my brace. I have to make sure that I rewrite my problem so that this is actually my final answer. If I leave it in the table like I had it, it will be marked wrong, even though all of these are correct. You have to use proper notation, ladies and gentlemen. All right, the next one here, and I'm going to have to erase this so I have room to do this. Sorry. Hopefully you already have that down. If not, rewind. Okay, so now we have this one. Again, they're giving me my rule. This is my rule, and these are my 3 values that I have to use. So I'm going to do the same thing I did a minute ago, where I'm making my table, and I have my x values, and I have my y values that I'm trying to find there. And this is my rule, negative x over 7 minus 5. That's my rule. So put my numbers down, negative 7, 7, and 14, because they're telling me right here that's what I have to use for my domain. That's my x values. Okay, remember I mentioned before a couple of tricks. First of all, this right here can be, actually, wait a minute. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm saying the wrong thing. Sorry, we already have that. Never mind. Okay, so we have negative 7. I have a negative 7 over 7. That's what, and then minus 5. That's my first problem there. So I have to clean all that up by saying adding, so that's going to be positive. That means 7 divided by 7 is 1. 1 minus 5 is negative 4. The next one, I have a negative 7 over 7 minus 5. This right here becomes negative 1. Negative 1 minus 5 is negative 6. My next one, I'm running out of room, so let me erase that. My next one that I have is 14. Excuse me, negative 14, because that was my number, negative, and then the 14 was my x, over 7 minus 5. So this here, negative divided by positive is a negative, and 14 divided by 7 is 2. So negative 2 minus 5 gives me negative 7. Again, as I said on the last one, here is my range. I am not done, though. I need to write my answer as R equals, and then my braces. I've got to have the braces. -4, -6, -7. Remember, that brace is telling me the set of numbers, and if I don't have that, I'm not telling the proper notation. I cannot just leave it right here in the table. I can't leave it like that, and I also cannot just write this. This is not acceptable. That's not enough. That doesn't work. So make sure you're doing everything you need to do to show your proper notation. Okay, the next one here says to make a function table and then graph the function. This first one, I think most people got correct, other than the graphing, that some of them did it wrong. A lot of you remembered, because this time they're not telling me anything to use, but they are giving me 3 places here, 1, 2, 3. So I need to come up with 3 values for x. It doesn't tell me anything, doesn't give me any values here, so I pick. Remember, we like -1, we like 0, and we like 1, especially if there's no fractions involved. Number 11 in a minute, we have to do something else. Okay, so we have our rule, which is 6 minus 2x, which means 6 minus 2 times -1. That means that's positive 2. 6 plus 2 is going to be 8. So my order pair is -1, 8. And make sure you put pairs in parentheses, your coordinates. The next one is 6 minus, and all that's going to be 0. So that's going to be 6. This is going to be 0, 6. My next one is 6 minus 2 times 1. That means 6 minus 2. And 6 minus 2 is 4. And then that's going to be 1 and 4. That's my order pair for that. So remember, you're just putting this number for your x value, this number for your y value to get your order pair right there. All right, now I have to plot it. Remember, you have to plot properly. So my first number is -1, 8. So from the center, right in the middle, my origin, I'm going to go -1 to the left, and I'm going to go 8 up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I know you can't see it, but I'm touching each one of those lines to do it. So there's my first point. Remember also, these points have to be on a line. If I don't make a line with this, I've made an error with my math. I need to go back to the beginning and try again. So I have -1, 8. The next one is 0, 6. So I'm not going right or left, and I'm going up 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Remember, this is also called my y-intercept. So that I know that because my x value is 0, 6 is my y-intercept. And then 1, 4, I'm going right 1 and then up 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And clearly I can see that makes a nice line there. And using a straight edge, I don't have that here. So sorry for my line, but my line has to go like so. Make sure you come a little bit off of the graph, and preferably you're going to use a straight edge so it looks better than that. But that's what it should look like. In addition, we know that it's a negative slope because right here, that is a negative a negative coefficient. And so there's my slope. Number 11, this time I have a fraction. Remember, instead of using 1, 0, and 1, I want to be fraction friendly. So I need to look at that denominator there. That denominator says 3. So I'm going to use -3, 0, and 3. That's going to make my life a whole lot easier. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is 1/3 times -3/1 minus 4. All of that 1/3 and -3/1 becomes -1. -1 minus 4 is -5. And so this is -3, -5. My next one is 0. That's easy enough. All that's going to be 0 minus 4. That means I have 4 here, -4, and then that gives me 0, -4. Again, right here, knowing it's my y-intercept because x is 0. And then my next one, I'm plugging in 3. So when I have 1/3 times 3/1, all that becomes 1. 1 minus 4 is -3. So now I have 3, -3. Again, plotting my points, and again, making sure that I have the correct slope of my line, and also make sure I'm plotting properly. This is a positive x, or a positive coefficient, so the line's going to go up in some way. So -3, 1, 2, 3, and down 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My first point, sorry, it should be right on that intersection. My board's a little off a little bit. 0, then -4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And my next one is -3. 3 to the right, 1, 2, 3 down. You can see each dot is just one line up from the last one. So again, drawing my line, It's going to look a little bit like this. Please make sure, though, that you are drawing it longer than that to go off of your grid. And again, I didn't say this, but we had to pick our values here because they're not telling me what to use here. And also they're giving me 3 spots, so I need 3 numbers. And we're using that denominator. And so denominator friendly numbers of -3, 0, and 3. All right, your bonus. Remember, independent and dependent. Almost always, if it is money involved like this, your dependent variable is going to be a paycheck. So this is a paycheck. This is the amount of money earned. It's going to be some kind, like, what are you walking home with when you're all done babysitting? Because if I babysit 1 hour, I get $7. If I babysit 2 hours, I get $14. If I babysit 3 hours, I get $21. So my final paycheck, the amount I go home with, depends on, see, dependent. It depends on that right there. How many hours am I working? I don't know. Depends on how long the people stay out, right? So if I'm babysitting, this is my independent variable, is the number of hours. And you kind of want to try to think of it this way, right? If it's got any kind of money involved, 9 times out of 10, if it's any kind of earnings, that's going to be your dependent variable because it all depends on how many hours you work. And then again, the hours, that's your independent. If you can get it into an equation and into that rule, remember if it's in the rule, it's independent. The equals blank, that's your dependent variable. All right, so that was a quick review of your functions test. Make sure you have been practicing and studying, and good luck.